Gary Cooper killing off the Indians. And although you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you.
Okay.
I don't think y'all hear me. You gotta check yourself. The thing is, before my entry into Gardendale, every time I pledged allegiance in the classroom, it had been with kids that looked like me. Kids I learned to high five, dap up, shoot marbles between shotgun houses with as we meandered into adulthood. In other words, I did miss what I left behind for a perceived greener pasture. Toni Morrison references the undeniable fact that something was lost in segregation. The loss doesn't celebrate the construction and division that racism produces, but what came out of that construction, a way of going against the grain for the sake of self-survival. In other words, taking the black force upon you, the nigger that you became, and making it a destination point, something to be studied, copied, and commodified within contemporary culture for the sake of modern art. Me and the kids I once pledged allegiance were being conditioned to blindly pledge loyalty to a system we hadn't begun to understand. Nor had the system pledged allegiance to us. There had been bombings, water hoses, billy club beatings, dog bites, hangings, mayhem, violence right in our own city, and yet we remained oblivious to the outer world of segregation, remaining encapsulated in our own sub-society of a perceived otherness. Maybe if we had been aware, or if our parents had been more woke, they would have revolted against this narrative, or at least questioned this insane allegiance to a society not yet fully committed to their best interests. And yes, I would watch the cowboy movies with my father, cheering for the cowboys to do the Indians dirty. Even outside playing with my friends between the shotgun houses in Smithfield, I strutted a 6-shooter cap gun with a full cowboy suit, thinking I could be the Lone Ranger, when in actuality, all I could ever hope to be was Tonto, a sidekick. What Baldwin knew, and I didn't, but was soon found out that there is this terrifying moment in one system of reality where you will realize the youth you were presented is not your reality lived. A moment that will contextualize race from a point of which there is no return. In other words, it is true. You do become the thing to be hunted and treated like an animal. Then it happened. The ball up in the air, and Michael Hallmark, my new best white friend, had thrown the spiral perfect. I was running so fast, I thought I would jump out of my PF flies because I could run fast and jump high, and they was laced real tight. I wanted to jump high, but couldn't jump high because the ball was sailing too far from my fingertips to reach it. The ball hit her on the side. I went to pick the ball up. She kicked real hard, called me nigga, called me nigga. She called me a nigga, and I hit her in the mouth with my fist real hard. Red appeared on her face, red blood rolling down her white face. She started crying. I started laughing. I wanted to cry. She called me that word, and I hit her real hard, and it felt damn good. Let me be clear. Eunice Pearl Davis, now Horton, daughter of Rosalie Davis, was never a timeout or stand in the corner type mother. Whenever he act up, get on his butt, meaning the teachers had full authorization to power when deemed necessary without parental consent. True story. There is no memory of how I got to the principal's office to wait for my punishment. Maybe it was the eerie silence around the event, because the teachers knew something I did not in terms of the history related to black boys and white women in the South. I could have known, but my parents chose to shield me from that part of adulthood for as long as they could. But Baldwin knew better, that there would come a time, and that time was now. The memory I remember is crystal clear. Eunice Pearl comes into the office and says to the principal, do not lay one hand on him. Whenever I say never, I mean never ever did Eunice Pearl utter those words in regards to me. I knew then, in this moment, my response to an action was bigger than the act. Even in the wrongness of hitting a girl, I had done no wrong in her eyes. It's complicated. After a few orbits around the sun, I would come to understand the enormous weight, the intensity of the event that could have taken my life. Forget 2 years after my 11-day segregation from my mother, but then don't. of how on September 15, 1963, an early Sunday morning dynamite blast inside a church more full of girls into forever memory. Forget Denise Bernier, but don't. Forget Addie Mae Collins, but don't. Forget Cynthia Wellesley, but don't. Forget Carol Robertson, but don't. And don't forget the little black boys. There are always a lineage of little black boys to draw context from. There had been Virgil Ware, who caught a bullet to the chest sitting on the handlebars of his brother's bicycle from a shooter riding shotgun on the back of a Confederate yielding motorbike. The end result, face down in the ditch. James Robinson, aimed by the church bombing because he had already experienced the moment of race realization, had been gunned down 2 hours after the blast in an alley. And of course, the police account matters more than the victim. The usual responses: he lunged, reached, thought he had, looked suspicious, made a move. They always flee. The police fired in the air, fired in self-defense, because niggas be magical. Niggas hang themselves by themselves, turn water into wine, slip off handcuffs, look like every other nigga, do other niggas time in jail, real and imagine, make freedom disappear in handcuffs, or turn into a life sentence, or yet, niggas just get shot dead and the world changes to television. Unbothered, unfeathered, unmoved. My father, who left work with the ghost of Emmett Till on his conscience, when he got the call, would years later admit, I had to go. Had to. He had to because I was in a place that really didn't really want me. They said, hey nigga, every day to discourage me from falling in love with their idea of beauty, their idea of truth, to never mistake black for white in terms of privilege. The principal wanted integration, was part of a movement for equal education and access. Perhaps was a dreamer and that all men and women are created equal. In his dream, he saw the need to protect this little black boy from a fate all too clear for little black boys that don't stay in line. The principal called a meeting with my father and the white girl's parents. The parents wanted my blood or neck, perhaps, and they were not happy their little girl got clocked in the mouth by a little black boy, or with the blood coagulated on her face and lips, but neither was I happy at being called a nigga. So we sat in the conundrum. In the end, the principal sided with his gut, the fact that what I had done was not wrong. My parents had not taught me to hate. I did not call her the derogatory name or any other thing I would come to know as an adult. Perhaps the principal had no choice if this social experiment was going to have an opportunity to work. The thing is, why am I not to believe there was a below the surface narrative by those who often control the narrative of someone whispering in the parent's ear, you know he can go missing. Didn't happen before. Turn up in the river eaten by catfish. I would never know how close I came to being seen at sunup with my neck cracked in the Kelly Ingram Park, swinging from a makeshift wooden cross. I would go back to school the next day like nothing happened. That big ass elephant in the room that no one wanted to talk about, still present and accounted for, race. The kids knew what happened, I knew what happened, yet not one of the adults wanted to talk about it publicly or in the open. After that day, I didn't dodge any more rocks and didn't associate with the other kids in my class. I only wanted to get far away from this madness as humanly possible because it was evident these people were incapable of being human. I never saw the white girl again. Maybe her parents took her out of school, unhappy at how white folks was loving and caring about the fate of this little black boy in Jefferson County. One thing I am certain of, and I would love to confirm this years later, I am almost certain the little white girl never called anyone the N-word again in life. Complicated, right? The next year, 6th grade, I was strolling to an all-black Catholic school planted directly in the hood, across from the tracks in Titusville, if you know what part of Birmingham you're from. And y'all know, where my Birmingham folks at? Okay, y'all know what I'm talking about. The key word being all black. There would be bonding over stack heels and platforms, circular afros and braided cornrows. We would drown each other in our language, the way we said man and gull, and we didn't run from our own skin. As a matter of fact, we ran head first into it. We were in the cocoon of blackness, and whiteness hadn't been inverted to the other. They were the others now, and we called each other home and black boy. It was all love, learning early in life to take what was given and turn it into something valuable. I'd left hell and returned back to a mythological paradise, if only for a moment. And yet, society would not care about the scars, the racial wounds, band-aided up while expecting me to forgive them who damn well knew what they were doing. Somebody had to pay for the racial scars that became repeated memory. I became the proverbial street hustler. And my goal was to get over on a system that systematically pulled the wool over my eyes, that there were entire dialogues I was not allowed to participate in, so I justified my actions as living my truth. But my truth only proved to be a lie I constantly came upon no matter the road traveled. The road turned into the sea, and I ended up drawn into a cyclone of confusion, spinning and spinning until I was back inside that invisible empire known as prison, as property of the state, inmate 289128. 289128, property of the state, or this malice thing never to be confused with justice. Nothing symbolic, okay? Dark is dark, cage is cage. Hunter and hunter are both in the literal. Make-believes and what ifs do not exist. A lie, nothing cryptic here. Okay, rape is rape, pray, you must pray no minute in the future safe from quiet insertions of a shank and masking tape. Okay, nothing here infinite, only time is constant to the merciful and the merciless. There are no allegories to hide behind. He slit his wrist, meaning he slit his fucking wrist. Okay, there's a cell with one window. Just before day dawns, early demise magnifies a dull metal toilet, the cool water cooling 2 canned sodas. Each wall a slab of soft gray cinder block. No posters featuring eroticized women with an exclusive and black tail, okay? The wall that slits the light does not reveal nothing new, ever. L'expose, the changing same, always a holding. One window offers a gateway. My face pressed against the window, and time rules this empire. Okay, the mind held hostage by time. Mind and body conjoined twins. The other wall holds a frame. The frame holds a metal door to contain utter disbelief of the invisible. Walls are gray, not like summer, but darkness, but darker. Yes, there's darkness, okay? And so, right here is where I want to acknowledge, or want to sort of talk about these roads in the life, these are sort of things that took me down various avenues in life, led me to prison time, to being incarcerated in Hagerstown, Maryland, facing more time than what I care to sort of even think about. After not thinking for myself and thinking and allowing other people and other ideas to sort of like populate my thinking and sort of get sucked up into the wrong ways of doing things, I found myself incarcerated. I found myself trying to figure out how I was going to make a life for myself. I didn't start writing until I got to be almost 40 years old, 38. So I wasn't in Birmingham with a little kid with a journal walking around trying to think I'm going to be a poet. I probably am the least likely dude that might get booked to be a writer, I promise you. But that's okay, you know what I'm saying? That's all right. The thing about it is, when I got to prison, I realized how everyone else had controlled my narrative except me. And I made myself a promise that if I would ever get another chance to sort of like a redo, that wasn't going to happen. And so through a lot of intervention, a lot of miracles, as they say, a lot of people on their knees praying and all that good stuff, I was able to go back before the judge after 5 years, what they call a motion for reconsideration of my sentence. My sentence was commuted. I was sent to a program in North Carolina for 2 years, right? And so during that time, I prepared for what I was going to do with my life. When I got back to Washington, D.C., I enrolled in college. I got my bachelor's. I decided, I knew I wanted to write. I went to a Furious Flower Conference, which is in honor of the first African-American poet. Anybody know who that is? Gwendolyn Brooks. I mean, excuse me, Pulitzer Prize winner, I'm sorry. The first Pulitzer Prize winning poet was Gwendolyn Brooks for a street in Bronzeville in 1949. But anyway, I'm at this conference, and all of these writers, all of these legendary figures that I've read about, you know, Amiri Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Hakeem Montgomery, Donnell Lee, Lucille Clifton. The list goes on and on and on of writers, African American black writers who try to adequately express the condition from which African Americans come out of and deal with on a daily basis, right? See, one of the things when you fall in love with literature, you need to fall with something that looks like yourself. You can't fall, that's key. I believe that. And so anytime I'm teaching my students, I want them to fall in love with something. I want them to fall with all the literature, but I want them to give them a reflection of themselves as well. It doesn't work any other way. I couldn't have come into writing starting with Shakespeare. I had to come somewhere else. I get all that stuff now, but I need to have these models. And so I understood I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to be a writer, but you know, and so my journey took me from Washington, D.C. to Chicago State University, where I got my Master's in Fine Arts and Creative Writing. And my thesis was my first book called The Definition of Place, which is a historical look at Birmingham, Alabama, from a period between 1912 and probably was 1973 or something like that. And begins with a shootout in a covered wagon in Gunnersville. Can't make it up. And from there, I got my PhD at State University, SUNY Albany. PhD in English creative writing. My dissertation was Culture, Memory, and Trauma in the Black Radical Tradition, Distraction in the Moment, which produced my third book of poetry, which was Pitch Dark Anarchy, along with a couple other things. I got a job coming out of my PhD program at the University of New Haven. Ended up, I became the first tenured person. I don't know if I want to say this, but I gotta say it because you know what? You gotta know what you can do. So I became the first tenured person in America that got 7 felonies, right? So I got 7 felony convictions, not a game. So I had to do something with my life. There was no choice. There was no other choice. And so that's sort of my journey in terms of that, right? And so every time I'm allowed the opportunity to speak, it's not nothing that I'm proud of, but I feel like I need to let you know that wherever your road takes you, it's not the end story. Like, don't let nobody else control your narrative. You can take control of what it is that you want to do with yourself, right? You can definitely do that. So, then we want to finish up right here. Y'all with me?
Yes.
All right, now I check on y'all. Housing Unit 3, C tier, cell 17 was nothing but a dark tomb. Sometimes when I gazed out my small rectangular window, fixated on the rolling green grass, pixelating the prison yard, I had to admit wholeheartedly my life was symbolic of failure. The first day I entered through the circular razor wire at Roxbury Correctional Facility, I began to see men who surrendered to time as if it were omnipotent. Knotted holes where their eye sockets should have been told me how a slow, meticulous death could decompose the body. And yet to tell you that I did not live in constant fear would be a lie. An inmate got smashed in the head with a television and died. Lockdown preceded the deed. For 2 weeks, I stayed confined to my 6x9 cell. Forget about running laps around the oval dirt track to take the edge off. Forget about pumping iron in the weight pit to release tension. For 2 consecutive weeks, nothing moved except the finches flying outside of our windows. Freedom could have been one running swoop over the razor wire, except the guard in the rifle tower had a long scope gun and wanted nothing better than to squeeze the trigger. Bullet penetrating flesh, my body dangling like a rag doll, my breath expiring to a nothing sound. The first few months of my 5-year bid, I relived still picture frames of my life, trying to understand what went wrong, trying to unearth the root cause of my current state. How did I really get into this cell? I know I rode a bluebird bus through the verdant hills of Maryland, but I mean, how did I come to reside inside a structure of concrete and iron? Rods that people know exist but fail to acknowledge. Prison was designed by people who could care less if I was real or fiction. Because I had to wake up when they said wake up, sleep when they said sleep, and eat upon command, I lived in a dramatic creation of which I had no control, the same as before entering my exile. Prison became an extension of the prison I lived in for all those years, and because we all live in the cage, the inhabitants within the structure adopted violence as their central motif, constructing a society within a society. There was a hierarchy with an invisible list of do's and don'ts, the most egregious offenses resulting in bodily harm and or death. Days blended into one long stretch of lockouts and lock-ins. Language found books like Fathering Words, Convicted in the Womb, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and Makes Me Wanna Holler. Language that demanded I create my own language to break out of the prison I had constructed around myself. After awakening from the multi-year exile into and out of the erasure, I know now. It's the sleeping ones that place me to sleep. The authorship of my life narrative belongs to me. I refuse to step into a story in progress, one in which I can only be driven by what other people's dialogues determine. Again, point of view matters, as in, if I rise from this park bench, gravitate towards the Hudson River, I am able to stare straight through the bronze cutout man, up the slight incline to a horizon that sets on West 150th Street and Broadway. Any alteration of view allows for post-war tenements with uniform fire escapes on either side to bleed into the cutout space where bone and cartilage and blood should be. Rotating our would-be lens 180 degrees, the newly formed view offers azaleas and dogwoods, presenting an alternative reality that could bring the bronze man alive. By walking away, the bronze man is trying to say the only way not to be a protagonist in somebody else's melodrama is to control your own narrative. Be the author of your own journey. All right? Well, all right. Y'all made it. How about that? First of all, I want to thank all the students for staying. I know some of you got classes and whatnot, but I want to thank Dr. Bond once again for bringing me. And are we going to be doing questions and answers? Yes. I know somebody got a question. They got to have one.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Dr. Horton?
I do.
Okay.
So, you know, Black people, we kind of struggle with the idea of peaceful protest versus violence. And in the example is that violence incident with the young white girl, it resulted in nobody calling you nigger anymore or any more situations. So it's kind of like, what are your views on it? Because violence ended up in a better situation. Everybody's quiet. It shut
Well,
up.
that's why I said it's complicated. I mean, I don't sit here, obviously I don't sit here to advocate a certain violence in that way, but one of the things you have to understand the context of that piece. I was in third or fourth grade, as a kid, and you know, kids do things when you become grown, you become responsible in a different way. But you make an interesting point when you talk about violence. There's a wonderful moment in the Black Power mixtape. You ever saw that? With Angela? Yes. No, come on, enjoy the conversation right there. Yes. But anyway, there's a beautiful moment with Angela Davis when they're asking her about violence, and she's like, "Man, what do you mean, man? I grew up down in my hill. What am I supposed to do?"
Right.
So I don't know if it becomes interesting, but I think that's something we have to talk about. At what point does one defend oneself? You know, I think it really comes down to that point right there. At what point do you start to defend yourself and not want to be pushed around? So I think that's different for every person, and I think you as a young person, you have to decide what that is for you. I know what it is for me. You know, but you know, there's a lot of things. I mean, but and I didn't really realize I was in that moment. It always takes us a long time to process what memory gives us. But I couldn't have told you that was the moment where I understood race in this thing. But over the time, I've come to look at that as a moment from which it's undeniable that it changed my whole view and my whole system of reality, right? Because before, I thought everybody was cool. Like, we run around playing football all the time, you know, like, yeah. No, we did something different. So yeah, so it's for you to decide. But I think you're on the quest to sort of figure that out and think about those things, because it's a valid point.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Years later, what's your relationship now with your hometown of Birmingham, Alabama?
I love that. Oh man, everywhere I go, you see everywhere I go, I put on my bio from Birmingham, Alabama. I don't play with that. It's not negotiable. I can be in New York, well, I don't care about that stuff, man. It can be New York, Harlem, Brooklyn, whatever. I'm from Birmingham. I mean, so that's my relation. So I love Birmingham in that way. So I come back a lot to visit my parents. Lucky to still have my parents here, and so my sister's in Alabama. So I come back a lot, and I always try to give back in any way I can. But Birmingham is non-negotiable, so it's just not.
I'm from Chicago, so
Okay.
I'm interested in how, like,
What part?
huh?
What part?
South side.
What about?
Huh?
What about?
Wait, what?
I say where about?
Oh, like, Roseland. Yeah,
I said on what, 53rd South Woodland.
Oh, okay. That's
There you
east, kind of.
Yeah.
I went to Bay Shabazz. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, that's Hakeem Al-Ghouli. That's my guy. My mentor. What are you
Okay.
talking about? He's one of the practitioners of the Black Arts Movement.
That's what I was saying, how to Chicago, because I know where
Because
I
I went Chicago State. So,
Oh, yeah.
So
it's
he
right
taught,
over there.
he taught there, and so he was one of mine. I told him, we have this side conversation. So she's talking about Hakeem, who was Don L. Lee, who changed his name to Hakeem Al-Ghouli, who was one of what we call the practitioners of the Black Arts Movement in sort of in the Midwest. You have Amir Baraka on the East Coast, but you have a young Don L. Lee, who will go on to start Third World Press, it's the second oldest press in the Black-owned press in the United States, and he was my mentor and my teacher at Chicago State. I took a class directly with the guy who was involved in the bill. So he taught me about the Black Arts Movement. It was like 5 of us, and he held court every week.
Yeah.
I didn't miss a session. You know what I mean? So, so I know Betty Shabazz very well. I interned at Third World Press. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's like my background. So
Okay.
as far as like, I know where Chicago has taken me,
Mhm.
and I guess it's just my base has always been Black Power, Afrocentric.
No,
focus.
Chicago's very episode.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
I just wanted to see how they choose you, but you obviously just answered.
No, I love it. Man, Chicago gave me everything I needed to go get out in this world.
Mhm.
And I still go back. I was just in Chicago State for the Gwendolyn Brooks celebration in November.
Mhm.
Chicago was great in terms of meeting a lot of writers and me finding myself as an academic, as a writer. It happened right there.
Because I came here to do that.
Well, we have to go on our own journey,
Yeah.
depending on what that is.
Yeah.
And I knew for me, I wanted to go to an MFA program that focused on the African American experience, which was hard to find in a graduate program that just does that.
Yeah.
And that was the sole reason I went. No other reason on. I had a couple other places I could have gone, but I chose that place specifically for that reason alone. So, but Chicago gave me a lot, and I still go back. My publisher is Northwestern.
Oh.
And that's-
By the way, he was here.
I know. When I was looking to see, I was like, hey.
He was here some years ago.
Right, I tried to call him, but I couldn't catch him. But I was like, because I wanted to ask him a couple of questions about his experience here. But yeah, I did see that. It was on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right there. I'm sorry.
I see that you went to Howard.
Yep.
And you were talking about in your past, your experience at a white institution versus a black institution. Do you think that had any effect on your choosing education when you got out of prison?
What do you mean? I guess I'm trying to figure what you talking
Like when you went to the Catholic school, you kind of like described it as being
It was all black Catholic school.
right,
Right.
and it was a better experience for you.
Right. Well, Howard, for me, was a different experience. I think I was just coming. We were that generation coming out of the civil rights, the parents from the civil rights struggle and the Black Power movements, and so we were sort of looking for freedom in a lot of different kind of ways and exploring our sort of youthfulness in that way. And I think I got involved with drugs as soon as I got to Howard. So I just did. But I dropped out my last year. I had 30-something credits left to go. So I'm not trying to go into that whole life right there, but I was doing a whole lot of stuff I ain't no business doing. This wasn't. But it was a 25-year journey with that. If you read the book, you'll go into it, but I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to glorify it. I'm not really here to glorify anything today. But I did make a lot of bad decisions. I started hustling, started selling drugs. I was all in the South. I was doing stuff.